Welcome to the Red Sneaker Writers Podcast. News, interviews, and writing tips for people who are serious about having a writing career and want some practical knowledge to help them achieve it. Your host is the nationally best-selling author of more than 50 books, William Bernhardt.
Hello, Red Sneaker Writers. Welcome to the November 16, 2020 episode of the podcast. Well, as you can probably tell just by listening, we've got power again. So I'm back in the studio. The ice storm is over. We're out of the dark ages and glad to be there. We have ice cream again. We did lose 2 magnificent trees, and that makes me sad. If nothing else, the whole experience reminded me how much we take advantage, like all this technology that allows me to write on a laptop that weighs less than 2 pounds and take it anywhere and record these podcasts that go out all over the world. And probably it's not such a bad thing to have a little reality check like that every now and again. But I miss the trees. My interview this episode will be with J.A. Ludwig, the author of the high fantasy series Blood Magic. The first book, which just came out recently, is called Bloodfall Arena, and people are comparing it to The Hunger Games and Game of Thrones. Anything games, apparently, in the fantasy world. I'm kidding. It's a terrific novel, really, really fine. So I wanted to talk to her about the first author experience and how this book came about. There will also be some writing tips later in the podcast, but first, the news. All kinds of things are happening in the publishing world these days. Perhaps one of the things that will most directly impact Red Sneaker writers is the announcement from Amazon that they are now allowing authors or their publishers to have direct input on the series page. Now, just to be clear what I'm talking about, some of you who write or read series books in a series like my Daniel Pike series. 5 books so far, going to be 6. 5th one just came out, Judge and Jury. But if you go on Amazon, you can find a page dedicated to that series. Well, those have always existed, assuming the authors or publishers identified the books as being in a series. But now they're allowing people to have input to help shape what that page looks like, which has caused all kinds of confusion and controversy. And how do I label my series? Is it, the Daniel Pike legal thriller series, or would my interview guests series be the Blood Magic high fantasy series, or is epic fantasy better? What do I go with? And then you're supposed to come up with a brief description of the series, which I think is brilliant. Give me a sentence or 2 to explain to people exactly what this is so they know whether they're interested. You can even dictate how the page looks and set up sort of a carousel ad type thing. If you don't give them any input, they'll assume you want the first book in the series to be most prominent, but you can change that. So there's a lot of opportunity here that I want to urge Red Sneaker writers to take advantage of. Too often, I think writers make the mistake when they're posting on Facebook or whatnot of highlighting the page where the book is selling, that particular book, when they copy a link and paste it into their social media posts. But it might be more advantageous to link people to the series page where they can see all the books. And if you're going to be linking to the series page, then it makes sense to make it look the way you want it to. In other news relating to Amazon, because ACX is Amazon's subsidiary, which gives authors the opportunity to record and produce audiobooks, ACX sent a note out, an email to its participants just a few days ago as I record it. You've heard me complain on previous podcasts about how slow the ACX and Audible approval rate has been. That's why it took so long for Dazzling Description to show up for sale, and I'm still waiting for Judge and Jury to show up. Everybody has assumed that this is COVID-related because so many people are working at home. But according to this message that ACX's president sent out earlier this week, no, they've been hit with, quote, unprecedented waves of submissions that do not meet our guidelines, end quote. So basically what they're saying is that people are sending them substandard books, and somehow that's slowing down the approval and adding process. I'm not sure why that would be. I mean, they listen to all of them and they say thumbs up and thumbs down, and I'm not sure that one takes more than the other. Are they saying that because people are submitting multiple times that take? I really can't tell from the letter what it is they're going for, but at least they are acknowledging that they are way behind. And that might be something for the Red Sneaker writer to consider too. There are other ways of having audiobooks distributed, Find-A-Way Voices being one that I've mentioned before, advantageous particularly if you're using Draft to Digital because the two work well together. And they can't force, Find-A-Way can't force Audible Books to add the book to their platform, but they can send it everywhere else, and at least that would be a workaround ACX that, for whatever reason, seems to be having troubles. Other publishing news. We've talked about how the Big Five may be diminishing. Several publishing houses are for sale, though not being sold, and Houghton Mifflin Harcourt is now up for sale as well. To be clear, HMH is not one of the Big Five. However, they are definitely a large publisher, and now they've put their trade or consumer division up for sale. That would be the books sold for the general market, books that you see at the bookstore. What they're holding on to is textbooks, which do very well for them. And this, of course, suggests that textbooks are doing well, but normal, regular, reader trade books, less so. Well, of course, the Big Five are already swarming. Some people are predicting that Simon & Schuster, which is itself up for sale, might be in the play, that somebody might be doing some 3-to-1 purchase or something. Who knows? But there's a lot of flux in traditional publishing right now, and right now it is just impossible to say how that's going to work out. Of course, there's flux in the world of self-publishing as well. Amazon announced this past week that they are shuttering down the Kindle Owners Lending Library, which you often see identified by the acronym KOLL, K-O-L-L. This is the function that's allowed people to borrow books without actually paying for them. They pay a subscription rate. And then authors are compensated not according to a sale, because there was no sale, but according to pages accessed, which we've discussed this before. Amazon has some spooky way of knowing whether somebody read the whole book they downloaded or read the first 3 pages and said, man. And if they don't open it at all, they bought it free or cheap and never opened it, then you wouldn't get paid at all. Well, this was a dubious business model to me from the beginning, but now it's over. They're shutting it down. No explanation given for why. Speaking of experiments involving Amazon, this one has to do with the UK. But people have detected that some of the Big Five publishers who normally do not participate in Amazon's Kindle Unlimited service have been doing so recently, quietly, with major authors and major backlist titles. Just to be clear, KU is the subscription service. It's a platform that people, if you're self-publishing or publishing somebody else, you can designate the book as being KU or not. If you do, there are a few sales and promotional advantages, but not that many in my opinion. But it does require you to be exclusive to Amazon, which of course is why the big five publishers have avoided it. Until now, it would appear that Pan Macmillan in the UK has given KU titles from authors like Geoffrey Archer, Winston Graham, major authors. HarperCollins UK has also put some of their backlist titles in. No word on whether this is a long-term or short-term. They're just testing the waters, clearly. And how long they're there will probably depend on how well it pans out for them. But it would appear that they're trying to use KU to move their backlist. I have also reported in the past that there have been problems, particularly this year, getting books printed. And now I'm talking about the actual physical printing of books on paper. And that the two largest printers in the United States were either shut down or out of business or working half-time or whatever, and for sale. Well, guess who bought one? Bertelsmann, which is, of course, the parent corporation of Penguin Random House, bought two of the book printing operations that a company named Quad, Q-U-A-D, has been trying to sell since at least last year. This makes sense, of course, that the world's largest publisher would want to have their own printer. This is an alignment that makes perfect sense and was probably a real godsend for Quad because and for everybody, since that keeps them printing and in business. One last note, one last bit of kind of news. A new study has been conducted. There have been studies in the past, people trying to determine the benefits of fiction and reading. Does it make you smarter? Does it make you a better person? I would have thought the answer to that was obvious already, but here's a new study. It was reported on by Beth Elwood at a site called SciPost, P-S-Y-P-O-S-T, so you can check it out yourself. Here's the bottom line, as best that I, with not a science degree to my name, am able to convey it. The researchers have found evidence that literary fiction, as opposed to popular fiction, literary fiction reading is connected to more accurate estimates of other people's opinions. That is, the people who read literary fiction are able to make more perceptive or accurate estimates of others. And popular fiction reading is linked to, quote, increased egocentric bias. Meaning what now? That it makes you more of what you already are? Or if you can read it yourself. I always thought that reading, period, was a good idea, and that, of course, reading any kind of fiction makes you more empathetic and helps you understand other people and the way they think, but these people seem determined to make some kind of distinction between the two, which makes me think, so what are you saying? Since I'm primarily a popular fiction writer, does that mean I'm just writing to egocentric bias, which really doesn't sound good? I have a hard time buying that, but like I said, you can check it out for yourself. To be fair, they did say in this report that they were not suggesting that literary fiction is, quote, inherently better, end quote. They're just saying that they, quote, cultivate different socio-cognitive processes, end quote. My advice, Red Sneaker writers, you go on writing what you like to write, and readers, you go on reading what you like to read. Challenge yourself occasionally. Sure, we all like to try new things. That's how you broaden your perspectives, discover new fields and new writers, but never let anybody make you feel guilty about reading. Just the fact that you read puts you in the upper crust sliver of intelligentsia, and there is never going to be anything wrong with that. In the writing tips section, I wanted to talk a little bit about what you've seen in the news section, not so much this time, but in the past, people talking